the art of competing supersedes skill 99% of the time in my mind. It just does. Unless you're just a one percenter now. Those one percenters are different. But by and large, the team that competes the hardest, that is the smartest, that limits their turnovers, that doesn't beat themselves, they're going to win the majority of the games. They just are.
Welcome to the Jamodi Podcast. We are all surrounded by amazing coaches and leaders. So let's get an inside look at not just what they do, but how they do what they do. After all, becoming the best versions of ourselves is Jamodi, just a matter of doing it. Today we are joined by the head men's basketball coach at Western Kentucky University, Steve Lutz. As an assistant coach, Coach Lutz had stops at Incarnate Word, Stephen F. Austin, SMU, Creighton, and Purdue. In 2021, he became the head coach at Texas A&M Corpus Christi. In 2 seasons, he led the Islanders to a Southland Conference regular season championship, 2 Southland Conference tournament championships, and the program's first ever NCAA tournament victory. He was named the 2023 Southland Coach of the Year. Coach Lutz is currently in his first season as the head coach at Western Kentucky and has led the Hilltoppers to a 19-11 record. Before we hear from Coach, take a moment to subscribe to our podcast and follow us on social media at Jamodi Podcast. I want to thank you so much for coming on here, giving up your time, talking hoops with me. This is an honor. Congratulations on, man, a couple awesome years, of success. And then now your new stop, and just thank you so much for giving up your time.
Yeah, no problem at all. Not a big deal at all.
Coach, in the world of college coaching, I can't imagine what your day looks like. It probably starts pretty early and it goes pretty late. What are some of those daily habits that have set you up for success?
Well, I don't know that I have the daily habits that have set me up for success, but I always try to wake up in the morning and probably the first thing I do is I look at my phone, make sure that nothing bad has happened the night before. Maybe I missed a text or somebody called in the middle of the night and, maybe one of the players was sick or, something happened in their family. So that's where I go first. I'm like anybody else, probably addicted to the phone a little bit. And then I've been able to get up in the mornings and exercise. And that's kind of helped me, especially with my family not being here. Normally it was me waking up the kids and helping with breakfast and getting them out the door and driving them to school or whatever. And because my daughter is a senior and my family stayed in Corpus.
Oh, wow.
Solo. So what I've been doing is I try to get outside and start walking about 6:30 or 6:45 in the morning and knock out, anywhere from 2 to 4 miles, depending upon my morning. And then get into the office. I use that time to answer some texts maybe from the night before or some emails. I'll listen to music. I'll listen to a podcast. And then some days I like the peace and quiet, and it allows me to sort through my day. I try to plan everything out, obviously in advance the night before when I get up in the morning, but it calms my mind and allows me to think clearly about what I need to get done for that day.
What are some podcasts that you're liking right now?
Man, I'm all over the map. People will send me stuff. I like a lot of those guys, those ex-NBA players.
Reddick and them, and
I like Reddick, but I like and I forget what it's called with Quentin Richardson and
okay.
Is
that Miles? Was that
like the hard heads or But yeah, I mean, I'm just all over the map. A lot of times, though, I listen to just anything that I scroll through and find interesting. If something catches my eye or I click on it, and if I like it, I listen. If I don't, I get rid of it about 10 minutes in.
I don't know if you feel this way, but dudes like Andrew Huberman, those guys that are kind of in that neuroscience realm, and they talk about morning habits. One of the things they always say to do is to not touch your phone, not get on it for a long time. And they always make me feel really bad because, like you, Coach, I'm trying to do the 4 a.m. thing. I've been on for 5 days straight. So if I kind of nod at any point, it's not you. It's getting up that early. But I check my phone immediately. I would have to imagine that dudes that are against getting on your phone, they don't coach. because I feel like so much can happen from whenever you go to sleep. You get those late night texts from players or parents or emails, and if you don't check it, there's a little bit of anxiety of like, what am I missing right now? Do you feel that way?
Yeah, I don't know that I feel like I'm missing anything because obviously one of the buzzwords these days is fear of missing out. Like I don't
Uh,
get into that. That stuff doesn't bother me.
yeah.
But I think as a coach, you have an obligation to a group, right? You have an obligation to your team and to their families. And God forbid, but if you get a text or a call in the middle of the night and someone's grandmother has passed or their aunt or uncle or even a mom and dad, I mean, you've got to snap into parent mode for that young person and you've got to go make sure they're okay. And so I don't feel I don't feel overwhelmed by that, having to check in every morning, but I also I feel like I have a sense of obligation to each and every one of those people in our organization to do so.
With your players, or and at college level, the parent interaction might be a little bit different, but do you have a 24/7 policy with them that at any point they can contact you, you do your best to get back with them? Or are there times throughout the week where you let them know, like, hey, I'm going to be out or off the map, off the grid during this time?
No, I don't know that I ever have a time that I'm off the grid or off the map, to be honest with you. And that's just part of it when you
Yeah.
recruit people and you promise to take care of their children. That's the give and the take with all of it. But with that being said, I mean, I also, say, hey, if there's anything that comes up, you're worried about your son or academically, or there's something happened in the family that I need to know about, call me all hours of the night. Now, if you're calling about playing time, you're wasting your time because we're not going to go down that road. And I've set that standard or that expectation from the beginning. But as it relates to them on a personal level and their well-being, I'm here 24/7.
Any high school experience that you have coaching before college, or do you go right in?
No, yeah, I went right in.
Okay.
I did. I ended up getting my degree in education. So I have a teaching degree in the state of Texas, which is probably expired. I did do my student teaching and all of those things.
Nice.
And I did my student teaching in Seguin, when I was at Texas Lutheran, and Barry Davis was the basketball coach. Barry was a really good player at A&M and a very successful high school basketball coach. And then obviously has coached in college and his administration now. But nonetheless, I did my student teaching with him, and I liked I liked the I like being around the kids in the classroom setting, but I didn't like uh, for for lack of a better way to say it, I didn't like being able to have a little more control over my program.
Coach, you
Okay.
can say it. Yeah, just say the
Yeah.
truth. Yeah, they're
Yeah, I didn't like the fact that some kid in my PE class could basically say, "Hey, no, I'm not going to walk today. I'm going to stand right here, stand right next to you," and there was absolutely nothing I could do or say, right? And it
there's a
drove
lot
me.
of teachers right now clapping and cheering and amening because we've all felt that for sure.
Yeah, and at some point, some little guy. I mean, he was, and at that time, I was 6'2", 205. I was in good shape still, and this little guy is probably 5'8", 165 pounds, and he kind of threatens me, and just says, "Hey, man, you wouldn't talk to me if you were in my neighborhood like that." And I'm like, "It's not worth it to me. I'm not going to get fired over this today."
Good
So
for you, Coach, because your
yeah,
life would have been on a very different path if you would have acted on that feeling that day that
yeah.
that we all
So
have. Yeah.
I knew that it was not going to be my calling, and I was lucky enough to get into college, and kind of the rest been history for me. I fell in love at that point.
And I ask that because you mentioned talking about playing time with parents. And I do think that is something that is kind of debated especially at the high school level. Like how willing are we to open up that door to them? Should we talk? I was at a program. I was at McKinney High School with Wes Watson, and it was very much a like hard line. We don't talk about that. When I came to Grapevine Faith Christian School, these people literally pay to be here. I opened the door to that. I guess if you could, like, what are your thoughts on, is it a good idea to allow parents and maybe players both into that conversation? Or is it smarter to draw a hard line, kind of like the way you do in college with that?
Well, in college, obviously, I recruit you. So,
Yeah.
and you have a choice to come here. And the thing about Grapevine for you is they have a choice to come there. So, if they don't like what you're telling them up front, then they obviously can go somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
Wes Watson at McKinney, he gets who's in the district, right?
Yeah.
The biggest hurdle I think for all of us is in my oldest daughter played college soccer. My younger daughter, she's still in high school and she's a senior and she plays basketball. We all think that our kid is a little better than they are, or they don't do wrong when maybe they do. And it's hard for parents and myself included. I mean, and I'm a college coach to have the take the blinders off and see it for what it is at face value. I'm lucky enough, like I said, to recruit them, and I tell every one of them, I have promised none of you playing time. So if you come in and you start as a freshman and a sophomore, and then some, transfer comes in or a freshman comes in behind you and they beat you out, there's nothing I can do for you other than to look you in the eye and say, hey, work harder and go kick his butt, take his
Yeah.
time, get your time back. Because ultimately every one of my, decisions is centered around Western Kentucky and making sure that we put our program in the best possible light to win games. And that means I'm going to play the best players and the guys that, are into being a team and the guys that are going to do what I ask them to do. So I've got it a little bit easier probably than you. With that being said,
Yeah.
I don't know if I was a high school coach, I would get into debating playing time because again, most parents aren't going to be able to look at it rationally.
I've never changed somebody's mind, coach, in all the years of having those conversations. They never went, oh, you know what? I get that, Matt.
Yeah. Now, and with that being said, I've got more bodies, right? And so I've got guys that can stat every practice and stat every shot. And so I've got more statistics to be able to say if a parent ever questioned me, well, okay, your son is shooting in a 20-minute scrimmage, he's shooting 5 threes and he's making 18% of them. Well, that doesn't make sense to shoot that many threes if you're shooting that low a percentage when I have a guy over here who shoots 45% and he's only getting two attempts a 20-minute scrimmage. So I've obviously got a little more leverage, or I've got a little more backing,
Sure.
statistical backing to help me make my decisions and to prove those points maybe than a high school coach.
That's a really good point. I think even for any high school coaches that do have more of that open door policy of, yes, I will talk to you about that. When I have those talks, I really like for the player to be in there so that all the stakeholders are on the same page. I don't want any messages being told differently or misread. But you nailed it. I think you got to have data. I think to go into any even with your own players, to go in a conversation with them and just talk about your feelings or what you see. Because even though, like, your eyes, coach, I bet are really good. You can watch a team play and you can figure out pretty quick who you need, who needs to take this role, who needs to be, just like I did in college, bring in spirit and energy on the bench. Like that you can see that.
Right.
But having that data maybe helps them to that role acceptance level, helps them get there quicker.
The Jamodi podcast is powered by Sideline Interactive. Sideline Interactive is the leading manufacturer for high-quality, innovative scoring tables and LED video display boards that help coaches and schools bring more excitement to fans, create huge fundraising opportunities, and make their jobs easier. Visit sidelineinteractive.com to check out their amazing products.
The statistics don't lie, right? I mean, and it doesn't mean that you're a bad person. It doesn't mean that you're not working hard. You can go into the gym and make 500 threes a day, but if and when you get in the game and you shoot, 12%, man, 12% is not very good. You've got to do better. And until you get to the point where you can make 35 to 45% of those, it just doesn't make sense for you to shoot a whole bunch. I had a young man last year when I was the coach at Corpus Christi, started off the season, I want to say either 0 for 12 from the three or maybe even like 1 for 16. Yet when you look at his statistics in practice, and he shot a high volume of them, he was 41, 42, 43%. And I kept telling people, don't think he can't shoot. He is a good shooter. He's a freshman. Once he adjusts to the game and the speed of the game, he's going to be fine. And in the conference tournament championship, to go to the NCAA tournament, after we've lost arguably one of our best players, our point guard, the young man hits 3, 4, 5 threes, and the announcers kept saying in the broadcast, apparently, like, well, he doesn't shoot a good percentage, but it's his day. And I just kept thinking in my mind and saying in my mind, the laws of averages they're gonna even out at some point. He shot it way too well in practice in a competitive environment against other talent for him not to make shots here at some point. And luckily for us, it was that day.
That's a good day. I love that you brought that up, because that happens more often, I feel like, than people realize. We see our players every day in practice. We play a lot of shooting games. We chart those. So I get to see them shoot fast and with pressure, which those two things, in my opinion, lead to more makes in games if you practice that way. But that's an incredible story of a guy that was struggling, but then near the end, he kept at it, kept shooting, and he had a great day. But I think the question comes down to confidence when he is struggling in that time, when he's starting to doubt himself or others. I think a big part of his success at the end has to do with you and your staff. So what are some things in that kind of situation that you do to help a player's confidence stay up when, golly, 1 for 16, it's hard for the doubt not to creep in?
Sure. And luckily, this young man didn't have a huge conscience, so he didn't think about it a whole bunch. He was pretty confident in himself. But number one, I just talked to them about the work, right? And you have to put in the work outside of the game. You have to put in the work outside of practice. And one of the pillars of our program is that we make 300 shots a day. Every single person makes 300 shots a day. So he was continuing to get his 300 in every day. He was continuing to make those shots in practice. And in practice, I did not talk to him a whole lot about shot selection. I just talked to him about taking good shots in rhythm and in flow. In a game, I would talk to him a little bit more about maybe getting a layup or a dunk first, getting a tip in, getting out in transition, getting your confidence up, getting feeling good about yourself before you start launching 25 footers, because the worst thing, and he was coming off the bench, the worst thing he could do would be to come into the game, and the first time the ball gets swung to him, been in for 20 seconds, he shoots one from 25 feet. Then my patience goes through the roof. And so, I just talked to him about get into the flow of the game. And then once you're set and you have a good shot, shoot it. But, if you can go get you a layup or a dunk or a put back, those sorts of things, it just helps you feel better about yourself and let your confidence get higher.
Yeah, you use that word flow, one of my favorite words. I think that's a huge feeling for a player, is whether they're a starter or coming off the bench, they want to find their flow. But you and I both know, like, they don't have a lot of time to do that. So I love the fact that you're talking about other things besides knocking down or shooting that first open shot to get their flow. When you see just a guy, they're doing everything right, confidence is starting to tank, they're taking those shots, they're getting in the flow, they're taking those shots in games, though, that they should take and you feel good about, but they're still missing. Anything else that you try to do to get inside besides just, it's not your night, taking them out? What are your thoughts there?
Again, I just, I try and tell them, go get you an easy one, right? Go get you, and it's hard to turn down open shots, but for the good of the team, if that's what you have to do in that current situation, then you got to turn down one maybe and maybe drive it to the rim and see if you can't get fouled and get to the free throw line. But I always try to just make sure that they're confident. I don't, very seldomly will I ever tell a guy like, you cannot shoot, because it's too hard at any level, but especially in my mind at the Division I level, it's too hard to get an open shot. And so when you have an open shot, you have to be ready to shoot. You have to be confident, and you have to know that, hey, I've put the work in. Now I'm gonna hit this shot and knock it down.
Coach, I want to apologize for that last question, because you got to love when people basically ask you the same thing twice in a row. And the moment that I said it, you were giving your answer. I was like, that's the same thing I just asked him. So we can't get those 2 minutes back, but that I'll be better. Coaches, the Jamodi podcast is powered by Shoot 360. The future of basketball has arrived in Dallas-Fort Worth. Shoot 360 combines the latest sports technology with the fundamentals of basketball skill development. The result is a one-of-a-kind video game-like basketball program designed to improve your shooting, dribbling, and passing. Visit shoot360dfw.com to learn more and register for your free 1-hour workout evaluation. Shoot 360, the future of basketball is here. You mentioned a little bit of your standards or pillars of your program, one being the 300 shot per day. Like I love that idea, because so many times people talk about standards, pillars, they're just words that, maybe words that you're trying to live by. But you talked about one standard of your program is something physical that you can do. I'd love to hear what are some of the other standards or pillars of your program.
We don't have a ton of rules, really. I mean, you try to recruit good people, and you put them around other good people and expect them to do the right things. But our main pillars, or our 3 rules, are number 1, love your teammate. Number 2 is do your best, or do the right thing, and then number 3 is do your best. And I think that encompasses everything. My biggest one, and obviously why it's number 1, is loving your teammate. I think that, myself included, when you're dealing with high school age athletes, or even when you're dealing with college age athletes, it's hard to get past ourselves. It just is, because we're so driven by success, and sometimes that success supersedes our team. And when you're on a team, whether it's your high school team or your college team or the NBA, or you're working in the workforce, you have to be on a team, and we all have different roles, and you have to be able to play your role and play your role to the best of your ability, knowing that your role can change at any time, right? I mean, obviously you were a good player. One game you might have been able to shoot 4 or 5 threes, and then the next game, he might have told you, hey man, I need you to create and get downhill and create for others, just because of the way their defense is geared. And you have to be able to get past yourself, right? And give yourself to the team. And that's why I say, if you'll love your teammate, man, you'll do that for your teammate every single day. Now, if you get selfish and you get away from that, it's going to be really, really hard. And that's human nature. And that's the things that we have a hard time overcoming. And my team currently is having a hard time overcoming that. And it drives me absolutely nuts, because if there's anything about me, man, we're going to work hard.
Yeah.
We're going to do the right things. And it doesn't matter who gets the credit, as long as we get where we need to get. And, one night I may get 25 in 10, and the next night I may get 6 and 3, but that doesn't mean that I didn't help us win and get to the championship. So to me, that supersedes anything and everything that we do. And then obviously doing the right things. I mean, doing the right things, I say, whatever your mom would tell you, whatever your grandma would tell you, whatever your dad or whoever your mentor is, or whoever would say, hey, well, should I go sit in the back of the class and have my headphones on and my cell phone out? Or should I sit in the front of class, take my hat off, put my phone up, take my headphones off? When it's time to go out on Friday night, Well, some of those guys are going to go out and go to the bar or to the club. Well, am I better off maybe going to a movie or going to hang out and watch movies or getting to the gym even more?
Yeah.
Um, those are the right things. If you're not 21, obviously alcohol is illegal. So do the right things and do those consistently. So I think that encompasses everything. And then obviously, luckily, when you recruit good players and good people, if they'll do their best is going to be good enough 99% of the time. If you'll give your best, the good Lord has blessed you with enough talent. Otherwise, you wouldn't be playing here. If you'll do your best, we're going to come out on top most of the time. So I think it just helps me. I don't have to have a big old thick book. I can remember starting in college coaching. We had a big old thick book. We went through it. And man, it had all these rules and handouts and shoot. It was cumbersome. So this has worked for me and it's worked for our program thus far. But I think it solves all your problems to keep it simple and obviously just to try to keep everybody moving the same direction on the same path, and you'll be fine.
I think so many coaches put themselves in a box with the rules that they lay out for their players, because you and I both know it's not just always black and white. A lot of times there's gray. A lot of times there's situations that are different that need to be dealt differently in a different way. So I love they reminded me a little bit of like kind of Coach K's rules with his third question or third standard. I thought was ask yourself, in anything you're doing, ask yourself, is this good for the team? Mm-hmm. When you ask yourself that question, man, it makes it pretty clear whether you should do that thing or not.
Yeah, absolutely. I hadn't read that book in a long time, but yeah.
Leading with the heart, right? Is that it? Yeah.
Now that you say that, I remember.
The fist approach. I always love those. I started out with that, and then the words change over the years, but the idea of not being in a box. And then you made me think a little bit about roles with kind of back in time. My issue was, and maybe you have players like this, I could play point, but there was one or two guys better than me at that. I could be a shooting guard, but there's a couple shooters better. I could play small forward, but there's a couple guys bigger, faster, stronger. So I found myself behind guys all the time. But consistency was one thing that I saw a lot of players lacked. They would rise and fall. Not if I could just stay the same, I could steal some time. And the other part was having an issue with or being directly defiant with their role. When you have guys that do struggle, and because you mentioned like that's what drives you nuts, when you have guys that are maybe getting to that selfish point, not accepting their role, what are some ways that you help them to see how it can better them and it can better the team?
I don't know that I have a good answer for that one, other than I just sit them down and I'll either watch film with them.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant the bench, because Bobby Knight said that's the greatest motivator right there. But
ultimately, we're going to get there. But yeah, I mean, I'll sit them down and I'll watch film with them. Obviously, I'll show them the statistics, and then just kind of talk through and try and make them understand that, hey, this kid is a little more talented than you, and he probably has a little more leeway, and it may not be fair in life because the good Lord blessed him with a little more talent than you, but it is what it is. And so accept it. And that doesn't mean that you still aren't a huge part of what we're going to do and help us win. And you're still going to play, right? You just may have to play a little bit different role. And I'll try and talk through it with them. I'm just very matter of fact.
Yeah.
I try to keep all of the emotions out of it. And again, I've told them on the front end, you can be my favorite player, right? Like I'd love to go eat dinner with you and hang out and go to church and watch movies and all that. But ultimately, every decision that I make still has to be driven by what's best for our university and our basketball program. And then, at some point, if they don't agree or they can't handle it, then they're just going to go sit. And Bob Knight was right about that. The best motivator is that bench. And a lot of times, young people, they don't understand or they can't accept it, or however you want to say it, until you take something away from them, and then, they understand it at that point.
I love the fact that you watch film with them and then you try to explain. And I imagine too, you give them things that they can do to improve, because I think a default and maybe just high school coaches, but all coaches they go to is that star in your role quote. I'm not a big fan of that personally. I understand what obviously they mean is, like, for me, given spirit and energy, that was a role that I really needed to be great at so that I could maybe step into another one. But they use examples like Dennis Rodman. He scored 0 points, had 25 rebounds, be a star at your role, or Patrick Beverly, or these guys, forgetting the fact that they scored or they make millions of dollars doing that role. Coach, you put me on the end of a bench and pay me $1 million, I'll do that. I'll be a star in that role, no doubt. But like the idea, they leave that quote at that without telling them what I think is the truth, which is, yes, be a star at your role so that you can earn more playing time. You definitely don't want to bury yourself, but here are the things that you need to be working on your own to improve. Because Rodman scored a bunch in college. So did Patrick Beverly. Like, any of these high school players that coaches are telling them to be stars at their role, just take charges. Well, if they have aspirations to play at the next level, they got to be doing more. They got to be working on their game in more ways. So I think you're right on the money. Show them things that they maybe aren't doing well right now, but we also got to give them a path, ways to improve, so that they don't just accept their role and stop working hard or stop trying to grow. Because that's what I've seen with that phrase or things like that.
Yeah, and that's tough, right? I mean, you're a young person and you've been given a role and you don't accept the role, or you don't like the role, or whatever. The guys that aren't going to give into it, right? The ones that are tough mentally and are going to continue to fight and scratch and claw, those guys are the ones you're going to ultimately win with anyway. So you're going to weed out certain people, and once you weed them out, well, it just allows you to have more confidence in those guys that are going to do what you ask them to do and do it to the best of their ability. So you're going to naturally gravitate towards them. Now, with that being said, you can't neglect those other ones. Like, you're going to need them at some point. So that's kind of back to my whole thing about just talk through it honestly with them. Yep. Try to treat them all the same, and it usually works itself out.
Coaches, the Jamodi podcast is powered by Ballogy. Manage and measure your players' skill development and increase accountability year-round utilizing the Ballogy app. Boost inter-squad competition with drills backed by the National High School Basketball Coaches Association, including a 40-shot Ballogy skills assessment. Please visit ballogy.com/teams for information on how you can provide this resource for your team. Practice planning is so huge. I would imagine for you, I mean, every second of your day is pretty precious. That's why I'm thankful that you gave up the time to talk here. What's the process for you on going through what you decide to do in practice, what you choose to do, what you leave out? What's that process for you?
Well, I mean, you've obviously got, every coach has certain values or certain skills or certain things that they absolutely believe in, and no matter what, we're going to be good at those, right? I've always been and this is probably because, I started my college coaching career under a guy named Danny Casper. I probably, to this day, will never get away from the fact that I know we can play hard and we can play defense every single night. There's going to be nights where maybe we don't shoot the ball well. So you can grind out a game, even though I don't play slow, but you can grind out a game on the defensive end and still come out with a victory. So I'm always going to put in our defense first. I'm going to probably be, for the first couple months, it's going to be 75% defense, just trying to get them to understand what we're trying to accomplish defensively. But also the defensive side of the ball, to me, it breeds toughness, right? Because it's not fun. None of us want to guard 94 feet, for 40 minutes a game. You don't want to do that. And so if you can get those guys to fight through and accept the fact that this is what we're going to be great at, And if you do so, then I'll give you some freedoms offensively. I think you're going to get to where you want to get as a team. But back to your original question is, so I'm always going to go through guarding the ball one-on-one. Then and I've always been a believer in starting with the parts till you get to the whole. So we'll go one-on-one to two-on-two to three-on-three to four-on-four to five-on-five. But even when we get to five-on-five, you're still going to have to guard your man one-on-one so that you don't put us in rotations. And you never lose sight of that. So I'll start there, but I've also come to learn in my mind that these guys, you can't go 5 defensive drills in a row anymore. Maybe in 1995 or 98 you could have, but in 2023 you can't. So once I do a couple warm-up drills, typically things that involve a lot of communication, getting up and down the floor to break a sweat and get loose, then I'll usually go right into one defensive drill and the most important defensive drill that I want to cover for the day. Then I from there, I usually try to go defense, offense, defense, offense. So if I do a defensive drill, then we may do shooting next, or we may do pick and rolls next, but I'm going to come back to a defensive drill after that. And everything that we do in practice is going to be competitive. So there's always a winner and a loser, and there's always a consequence if you don't, ring the bell, if you don't win the game, if you don't meet the standard. So that's kind of the way I've approached it. As I get, as the beginning of the season begins, practices are longer, you talk more. But then once I get into the season, man, I try to have those guys off the floor in 60 to 75 minutes. But in those 60 to 75 minutes, we're going to go full speed. We're going to have wins and losses. And that doesn't include like your warm-ups. The 15 minutes that the strength coaches or the trainers or whoever does the warm-up, these guys, I don't count that as practice these days. I just don't.
Yeah. That's their time. That's their show right there. That's their,
yeah. And I'm not saying it's not needed
no, it is important, but I feel like they're getting longer and longer, more in depth. Coach Driscoll, Matthew Driscoll, is the assistant coach at my senior year, and one time he just got us right into zigzag one-on-one right at the beginning. It's like, Coach, no movement prep, nothing. He told me, he said, when a dog is sitting on the side of the road and a car goes by, it doesn't have to stretch; it just sprints after it. And then he laughed and everything. And I remember thinking, like, what are you saying? Like, what are you calling me right now?
I was going to say the dog analogy probably wasn't the best. And Matt is a very peak. He's PC for sure, but that's funny.
But it was early 2000s, so you could say things like that. No, but how? So you talked about competing in practice late in the year, even though it's only 60 to 75 minutes. Are you still bone on bone, like competing like that, or do you start to taper off?
Yeah, no, we taper off. We absolutely taper off, but we'll get into scouting report at that point, and it depends on the day. Sometimes I'll go offense, defense, offense, or I may go 3 possessions in a row where we have a scout team and you've got to defend it and those sorts of things. But yeah, we'll go bone on bone. I don't, I don't believe that you can go through the motions, Monday through Wednesday and be able to hook it up and fight and compete on Thursday. And I get it. There is some risk involved with injuries and those sorts of things, but I've seen guys roll their ankle and shoot around too. So
guy rolled his ankle and knockout. I thought this will be fun before our first district game to kind of loosen us up. We'll finish with knockout. Best player rolled his ankle. We haven't played knockout since. But I think that's the balance though, right? And I don't have a good answer for that. I think from year to year, maybe like if we've been somewhat healthy, we'll push it a little bit longer. If we've been battling it all season long, then we might not risk it. But my heart says, to your point, slippage is going to happen
if we're only doing things 5-on-0, especially with high school kids, college players. I think you need to stay sharp. But man, that balance, I don't know if there is a perfect way to do it. But like you kind of said, maybe it's more about the feel. Like, what do you feel in that time?
Yeah, yeah, and our definitely our practices will fluctuate. I mean, there's been days where I walked in and said, "Hey, today we're only going to shoot," right? And I listen to the trainers, I listen to my staff, and they usually have a really good pulse on that kind of stuff. But I the art of competing supersedes skill 99% of the time in my mind. It just does. Unless you're just a one percenter now, those one percenters are different. But by and large, the team that competes the hardest, that is the smartest, that limits their turnovers, that doesn't beat themselves, they're going to win the majority of the games. They just are. In any sport. I don't care what sport you're coaching.
Yeah, that's good. You mentioned how you do 75% of it is defense. How in the world do you get to where you're averaging 80 points a game? Because I would think I circled it, because I think if you're averaging that many, obviously the pace of play that could be generated by defense. If you're turning them over, creating harder shots for them, they're shooting a lower percentage, quicker possessions. But offensively, you got to be pretty darn good to do that too.
Yeah, and you know what? We were, top 25 in the country in turnovers forced per game and that kind of stuff. But I think that our biggest philosophy offensively is I want to score in the first 12 seconds of the shot clock. So in the simplest of terms, right? Everybody sends back one or two defensively, and they're usually a guard. Right. And so if I can get the ball out in transition and I can get my big at the rim within 3, 4, 5 seconds, they're usually going to create my first mismatch, because a guard is going to be guarding a big in the post.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the best shot in college basketball is the layup or the dunk. And so, I'm going to fly the guys to the corner, the wings, and then my point guard, he's going to push really, really hard, trying to get to the elbow, trying to get into the paint, trying to get us a dump off for a layup or a dunk, or get his own layup or dunk. And again, if I've created the mismatch at the rim with a guard on a big, well, now I've got a big guard and somebody else somewhere as well. And so if you can score before the defense is set, that's going to be your best opportunity to score, right? And so we try to instill in those guys that just you constantly have to put pressure on the rim. And if you can get easy ones through your defense, the run out, layups and dunks and those sorts of things, man, you're going to really increase your numbers. But luckily at Corpus Christi, I mean, that 80 points a game, that came also because we had several guys that offensively could really shoot the ball and knew how to play basketball. So it wasn't as much me as it was them.
I love the idea of playing fast and trying to score early. Getting the guy to run to the rim, it makes a lot of sense, especially with getting that mismatch, getting guys to dangerous spots and corners. Are you finding that, like, is it easier to score early when you're keeping it that simple, or is there a secondary break that rolls into it? Because to me, and I'll just give you a little bit of my opinion, I think the secondary break sometimes slows us down and takes away some of those early opportunities. But if you're able to, early offense, nothing is there, flowing to secondary, I think it could work. But what are your thoughts with that?
Early on in my career, we ran a very much a structured secondary break. As I've gone along in my career and just watched people, I've gotten away from it. With that being said, once the point guard hits the elbow, if we don't have a layup or a dunk, he kind of bounces out to the wing. So now you've got him free throw line extended, and you've got a trail man. And then so now we don't have a structured break at that point. When we hit the trail, he could go back into a dribble handoff on the strong side. Now you've created kind of a zoom action. He can reverse the ball through the top of the key and chase it with the ball screen. He can go right into a ball screen for the point. I don't tell them what to do at that point.
Yeah.
I'm telling them to read and react what the defense has given us. Now, with that being said, we've talked about going into the game. Okay, hey guys, they guard ball screens this way. So if they're, for example, they don't switch and they maybe hard hedge, let's reverse the ball a lot. Right. Let's chase it with the ball screen, and then we can pick and pop our four-man, who hopefully is a good shooter, on a naked side, where now they've got a decision to make. Are they going to switch it? If they stick with what they do, well, who's going to X out to the corner? So now you're trying to pick apart what they do or manipulate what they do defensively and help yourself offensively. So we try to do that more often than not during that game, because that's the way they do things.
I love the way you said that about the guy bouncing out, hitting the trail, and then the trail can do multiple things. Chris Oliver with Basketball Immersion talked about must actions versus possibilities, and how we want to get away from must actions, which is like, you reverse it, he must do this. Mm-hmm. I think that's what a secondary does to us quite a bit, is it boxes us into a lot of must actions that if that must action isn't there, what do we got? We're come out, set up something else. When you deal with possibilities, it's obviously more control to our players. That maybe that's the scary part, is they have to make more decisions. But what it's like goes back to Michael Jordan's quote: whatever they choose, the defense chooses, they're wrong. You give your players those possibilities, multiple things that they can choose to do. Man, that's where really like free flowing offense, I think, comes from.
Yeah, and again, if you have good spacing and you have guys that are intelligent and know how to play a little bit, you're just trying to put the defense in a bind, right? You're trying to get two people on the ball somehow, whether it's through a ball screen, whether it's through a zoom action that now creates someone rolling to the rim, and you've got to bump the roller, and now you've got to close out. I mean, you're just trying to get the defense to shift. The worst thing that you can do from an offensive standpoint is allow the defense to be set and know what the heck you're going to do, and then guard it. I mean, the coach on the other bench is usually a good coach too. So he's going to have his team prepared. I'd rather put them in positions that they've got to think and react and change, than allow them to say, okay, here's what they're going to run. Here, you're going to run 55 red. Okay, we're going to guard 55 red this way.
Yeah, that timing of the order of that is important. Like, we want defense to react, coach to react to their reaction, instead of coach react and defense reacts to him and is prepared. I think any way that we can make that order of operations happen, or the first one, that seems to be a good balance or a good idea. Coaches, we are all searching for ways to better evaluate players in order to give meaningful feedback. Over 15 years ago, I put together a test called the Jamodi Skill Rating. The JSR takes players through a series of tests involving basketball skill or athleticism, giving them one rating at the end. Their JSR rating will give you clarity on what needs to be discussed with players and parents on areas they need to focus on improving. I test our players at least 4 times each year. They're able to compete against each other, past players' scores, and most importantly, their past performances. If you'd like to start testing your athletes, email me at jamodipodcast@gmail.com for more information. Really unique, because you mentioned your family being back in Corpus Christi and you being there. I got to imagine one that's tough. How do you balance coaching and family life, especially in the situation that you're in right now?
Man, I don't do a good job right now, right? Because they're not here. Before, I just always try to be present in the moment. Like, my wife won't allow us to have cell phones at the table at dinner and those sorts of things. But I would always I'd always wake up my son, who was 10, and then I had a teenage daughter that was still at home last year too, and she was always tough to get out of bed. So I was making sure those guys got up, and then, being downstairs with them when they're eating breakfast and getting ready. And so you're kind of talking through their day and what's going on. And then the evenings, I would try to especially be present for dinner and maybe watch a little TV or hang out, for an hour or two. And then I just try and get back at it at 8:30 or 9, and then, work till whenever. uh, I got tired. The older I've gotten, I probably have gotten to bed earlier. And part of that is maybe just getting old and waking up earlier. But part of it is because a year ago, a little over a year ago, my wife had a heart attack. And
Oh.
so I vowed at that point that I was going to make sure I went to bed when she went to bed.
Hmm.
And so if she wanted to go to bed at 10:30 or 11, we're at 10 o'clock. We're going to go to bed at 10:30, 11, whatever, and make sure that I was in bed when she was in bed. And then get up in the morning and get your stuff done. I've found as I get older that I do better and I think clearer in the mornings because by the end of the day, and you've had a million different things come at you and you're kind of tired. And it doesn't make any sense to make decisions while you're tired. So that's the way I've handled it. Now, with them not being here, we've utilized FaceTime a lot.
Yeah.
That's the great thing about some of the technology is that we have FaceTime and my kids call me every day and then they call me on the way to school in the morning since I'm not able to be there for that morning routine. Typically I'm out walking anyways, so it works out good. Um, Side note though, I don't let them FaceTime me while they're driving. So
Nice.
yeah, so we talk as much as we can and then, text and all those sorts of things. And in this world, you're just a text away or a call away. So it's easy to get a hold of one another.
Coach, first of all, apologize. I laughed a little bit when you said maybe because I'm getting older, and then I didn't know the next part. I really should have held that laugh back because that's a serious, obviously a serious thing and a big reason for a shift in kind of your schedule, and it makes a lot of sense. But in this new normal that you have, it sounds like you're doing the best job with that. I can't imagine how hard it is. But I was really impressed with like when you were around them, it seemed that you kept using the word present. You were there in the morning, you're there at night. How were you able to? Because I think one of the hardest things is like is us. I don't care what level you're at, disconnecting mentally, even like I'm there, but am I really present? How are you able to do that with family and the job that you have?
Boy, I don't have a good answer for that one either. Obviously leaving the cell phone in the other room or whatever that helps you.
Yeah.
But I've gotten to the point, and I've been decent about this most of my life, but I've gotten to the point where I can compartmentalize stuff, and maybe I'll put it in the box over here, and I'll come back to it later. But I don't know that is the right answer. I think you just do the best you can with being there, and usually, having a teenage daughter and a 10-year-old son and then one in college, they've always got stuff going on. So they want to talk about what's going on with them. And you're interested in it. Like they're not leading boring lives. Right. So it helped me, I guess, maybe that way because I was interested in what they were doing. But I don't know that I answered that one real well. I don't know.
No, I think it is a good answer to your point. I mean, it's not that anybody's doing it wrong, but I was more interested in kind of the way that you're able to. I think compartmentalizing makes a lot of sense. Like having the ability to whatever the film that you're watching or anything to press pause in your head and literally be where your feet are. That's huge. Coach, the speed round. These are quick questions. Anybody that knows you after they hear your answers here, they're really going to know who you are. Ready?
Yep.
All right. Favorite ice cream flavor?
Chocolate chip cookie dough.
Oh, nice. Chocolate chip cookie dough.
Oh, I'm sorry. Cookie dough.
Cookie dough. Okay.
Cookie dough. Yeah,
well, I guess so.
Vanilla.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, no, that's. I think you said it right. I think I added emphasis on the wrong
syllable. I mean, anything Bluebell, I'm in.
There you go. They have Bluebell there where you are.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, nice. Okay, because that'd be a deal breaker. Like,
I hear you.
Greatest shooter of all time.
Ooh, guy that I've coached or
all time and watched. Yeah, but
that's a tough one. I'm gonna go with Doug McDermott on that one.
Wow, Coach, that's a first. That's the first time his name's come up.
I'm just going off on coach though. I'm not guy. I mean, obviously Larry Bird, Steph Curry, all those.
Yeah.
I'm going to stick with guys I've coached.
Okay, I like that. Best basketball movie of all time.
Ooh, we just had this debate the other day. Man, that one's so hard. Like way back in the day, you might remember One on One. You remember that one? You're too young for that.
Well, what is that? Is that the whole name of it, or is there more to it? Because there's a movie that a lot of coaches talk about from like the 70s and 80s that I was born in 82, so I'm not that young, but I don't know.
I'm trying to think of his name. It was like Robbie something.
Yeah, Robbie Benson.
Benson.
Yeah, that's the movie.
Me growing up, that was the one. I think it was called One on One.
Okay,
but I liked them all. I'm easy in that regard.
I'm writing it down though because it's been enough people that have said it to where I got to check it out. Texting or talking?
Texting.
For high school, shot clock or no shot clock?
Shot clock.
Thanks, Coach. Appreciate that. Favorite holiday?
Ooh, Cinco de Mayo.
Wow, there you go. You're up 3 on defense with 7 seconds left. Do you foul or no foul?
7 seconds is hard. 5-4, I'm gonna foul.
Okay.
7 is hard. I go on gut.
Okay.
But 5 is kind of my cutoff in my mind. Obviously, when I was at Purdue, we fouled up 7 or 8 seconds against Virginia in the Elite Eight, and obviously Virginia went to the Final Four and we did not. So I don't know that 5 is usually my cutoff though.
Okay, a couple more. What book would you give someone? You can always pass. You can always pass.
No. A salty piece of land. I mean, I like all kinds of stuff. I'm a big Jimmy Buffett guy. Obviously, Jimmy passed the other day.
Yeah.
So he's on my mind, and that was a good one. I got books all over. I like different things, so I'm whatever.
What genre do you go to? Like when you're, if you could choose?
Usually, like basketball or self-help or things to make you better. But then I also like those books like A Salty Piece of Land, which is just your imagination, right? And being on a beach somewhere and enjoying life.
That's one I've never heard before. I like that.
I'm a little different. I got it.
No, it's good. Last one might be the most important. In basketball, who is the GOAT as a player?
Oh, not even close. That one's Michael Jordan.
Okay. You're very decisive on that one. Yeah. All right. I'll make it a little harder then. As a coach, as a basketball coach, who's the GOAT?
That I've coached?
Or no, like of all time, what coach of all time? Greatest of all time. Coach, yeah.
Man, that's a tough one.
And we can keep it in basketball, or because that's normally what I talk about, or anybody. But yeah, who do you got?
I mean, growing up, I was a Celtics guy, so I'm going to go Casey Jones. But I don't know. I mean, Red Auerbach. I mean, I'm reading John Thompson's book right now, and so I'm reading all about Red. I like Parcells a lot. Andy Reid, obviously fantastic. I mean, I don't know. That's a really hard one.
I don't think on the coaching one you can answer it. The playing one, especially for basketball, I think there's a better debate there. Really hard on the other one, but I'm a Michael Jordan guy too. So
I mean, if Purdue people listen to this and hear me not say John Wooden, I'll probably be in trouble for that. But I mean, all those guys are so fantastic. I don't know this, but I'm with you. We argue with these young players all the time about that. They just don't know. They
got to watch Last Dance. They got to watch it.
I hear you,
Coach. This was awesome. So much fun to get to know you and learn more about you as a coach and the standards and pillars and things that you do with your program, your players. Thank you so much for your time.
No problem. It was good to be on here, and I appreciate you reaching out and having me, Matt.
Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the Jamodi Podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.